Because God created us to be changing, growing beings. He created us to grow and to evolve and to be better and to grow. Because if not, if that were the case, then he would just say, you're saved, you're not, you're saved, you're not. And what's even the point of living? You know what I mean? He created us to be changing, growing beings. So we need to get into our mindset that we can grow and we can be better than what we are. So looking at the fixed mindset, people who have fixed mindset, they'll avoid any kind of challenge. Not any kind, but they'll avoid challenges in general. They like to play it safe. They want to sit back, not take any risks. They'll shy away from things that they don't know and don't understand and don't want to understand. They will be like, nope, not really interested, don't care. They believe that intelligence is fixed and it's static and cannot grow. Like, well, I'm just a dumb kid. I can't read. I can't. For us teachers who have been in school, you know, the kids are like, I can't do math. That's the fixed mindset. I can't do this, period. I can't grow beyond that. They won't carry out any actions without making sure that it is, that basically they won't take risks. They won't take any actions that are not for sure that they're going to do some kind of success in it. Granted, by the way, we're not all, like, we have aspects of both growth and fixed in our minds. I'm not saying that all of us here are just all fixed or all growth. We have bits of each, but people with fixed mindsets feel threatened when other people succeed. When other people are doing well, they feel like embarrassed or like something's wrong with them. The fixed mindset understands failure as a limit of their own self, and they will give up easily. They rationalize things whenever they can't figure out, well, I just wasn't taught this way, so I just can't do it.
You just weren't listening when it was.
Right. They believe challenges are completely related, or not challenges, they believe that your skills are directly related to your like biological stuff. It's not related to something of yourself. It's either you're born with it or you don't have it. When they get feedback, they take it personally. That, you know, it's like, oh, you're just criticizing who I am. Let's see. Oh, whenever they experience major setbacks, these people can blame others and say, well, it was their fault. It was my parents' fault for doing this. It was, speaking for myself here, because there was a lot of times where I blamed my parents for how it was. Let's see, they will also get discouraged very easily because they just feel like they can't ever achieve. So, fixed mindset, some of that is going to relate to you, some of it may not. Something in there probably does, because we all, I think, have fixed mindsets in specific areas. And so what we need to do now is try to take that into more of a growth mindset. And when you get into this point of growth mindset, it will start to, you'll start to see that your world opens up. You have much more freedom. You have less anxiety. You have less concerns about your own insecurities. So, thank you. It's like out of the corner of my eyes, you know, like ADHD.
A stroke.
But you have, yeah. Woo. But you have, like, you'll have with this, when you have growth mindset, you'll feel much more secure. You'll feel better about who you are, and from that confidence and that self-assurance, other people will see that, and you can start to help impact the world that way. So let's look at growth mindset. So growth mindset, when you would say something like, I'm not good at this, growth mindset would say, okay, what am I missing? What's missing from this? So rather than thinking it's fixed on them, they're saying, okay, I'm not getting this, I'm not good at this, so there's something I'm missing. What do I need to get to be better at it? Or, dang, I just cannot get this. Instead of saying I can't get this, they say, I'm on the right track. I'm trying, I'm doing my best, I'm getting there. I'm not there yet. And I think that's the big thing, which I'm kind of jumping to one of my first points, but if you add the word yet, that's where you start to get into the growth mindset. I can't do this yet. And that yet is very important because you're thinking, oh, well, eventually I could get there. And it becomes less of a personal like attack on you and more of a, I'm just really not interested in that right now. For example, I'm not really interested in art, but now I know I could do art if I really wanted to. See how that takes the difference in that? Instead of saying something like, I give up, they'll say, you know what, I'm going to use something that I did from this to apply to another area. And they're not saying this like, actually words in their head. But instead of saying, I give up, they're going to say, well, I'm going to take these skills and use it in a different area over here. This is way too hard. Instead of saying this is way too hard, instead they'll say, this is just going to take some time. And this is going to take some effort. Okay? I can't make this any better. And a growth mindset becomes to, I can always improve it, but I got to keep trying. Okay? I made a mistake. Then becomes, you know what? Mistakes are good. Because I learned from them. Because you guys don't learn from doing the same thing right all the time. There's no growth there. Mistakes, failures are very important. And that's a big thing about growth mindset is you actually kind of celebrate your failures in a way.
Opportunities for learning.
I'm sure all of you have heard the very famous, and I guess now infamous, whatever, person of Thomas Edison. Someone fill me in on Thomas Edison. What was he so impactful for?
Because no matter how many times his factory burned down, he continued to move on.
I learned how not to build a light bulb 1,000 times.
1,000 times, right? It's what he said. One of his most famous quotes is, I learned how not to build a light bulb, but it only took that one time, and now look. But he didn't give up. He's like one of those examples of growth mindset. Yeah. Instead of saying something like, well, they're so smart, I'll never be as smart as them, that turns into, you know what, I'm going to figure out how they do that. I want to figure out how they do it. Because it's not a matter of fixed personality differences or whatnot. Saying I'm not good enough in a fixed mindset now becomes, am I really trying my best? Can I do more? Can I keep pushing on? This one I thought this is very much an educator statement, but I just thought it was funny because your educators get it. Plan A didn't work, I give up. Turns into, well, the alphabet has 25 more letters.
And then you can double them.
Yeah.
Right.
And add a number.
That a trained person in me.
Until you get up to 1,000 failed light bulbs. So with growth mindset, you'll view challenges as opportunities for growth. When you start getting frustrated, when you start thinking this way, when we start getting into the concept of allowing God to see that we are still evolving, changing people, and we're working out our salvation, challenges then become opportunities for growth. When we meet someone who we don't understand, who has a very different lifestyle than us, rather than closing them off and saying, we can say, wonder why they think that way. How can that change me? How can that help me understand how better to minister to them? Because that's ultimately what we want to do. We want to try to win them to Christ. Not saying we got to be friends with them. There's a lot of people out there I'm not friends with. But it doesn't stop me from engaging with them in conversation about why they think the way they do. Why did you say that? And to try to understand where they're coming from. To acknowledge, growth mindset will acknowledge and embrace your own weaknesses, which is what we talked about last week. You'll understand where your weaknesses are, you accept that, you acknowledge it, and say, I'm working on it. I haven't got there yet. In a growth mindset, you think of intelligence and talent as something that is dynamic and changing and evolving. If I might, pull you guys into it. When you were back in your 20s, would you think that you'd be enjoying hiking and camping and stuff as much as you are now? Probably did it as a kid, but would you think that you're going out backpacking and stuff every weekend like this? And you're constantly getting better at it. I've even seen that just with you guys. Well, can you, if you wouldn't mind, this was on the spot, but could you tell me your first hiking experience now?
Yeah, we did. Our packs were 45 pounds.
Yeah, and it was backpacking, not just hiking,
Yeah.
which makes a big difference. We were carrying everything with us.
And we didn't take enough water.
Mm-hmm.
And it was super hot.
And we didn't fill up when we had the opportunity.
Yeah. And we were really glad when we got to the creek.
And so you had overpacked, you didn't have the water, you didn't really know the path as well as you do now.
And we only did, about 7 miles when we were dead?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was an opportunity where a lot of people, when they encounter something like that, they'll get back home and go, I ain't doing that ever again. And that's what would be a fixed mindset. It would be like, well, I just can't hike. I'm not good at this. I can't do it. But a growth mindset says, okay, that was a learning experience. And now they're getting better and better and better and better. And I have to use your guys' example because I have even seen that since I've started hiking. Because every time I go out, Jeff's like, well, I got this new thing. You want to see it? And I'm like, yeah, I want to see it. And so even with activities and skills. And I have to admit, I'm gonna call out Jill here too. Sorry, but like seeing Jill like come a long way. You can tell in yourself when it comes to hiking. I remember like we celebrate your victories because we get to a point you're like, last year I wouldn't have been able to do this.
Yeah.
And you celebrate those victories too with that growth mindset. You start to see those challenges. You see those challenges as opportunities. You see as talent and skill as something that's dynamic and fluid that people can learn it. You're also inspired by other people to succeed in a growth mindset. You're not jealous of them anymore. You're happy for them. My brother, I have to use him as an example. He's kind of a prodigy when it comes to music or art or pretty much anything. I won't go into his whole history right now. There is nothing artistic that he cannot do. And he does it right the first time. But as an example, never did acting before in his entire life. School decided to do Shakespeare. He loves Shakespeare. He's the kind of person my brother is. Loves Shakespeare. Auditioned for the role, thinking he was going to get like, it was Romeo and Juliet. So he was going to get like, anyway, I don't remember the names, but side character. Going to get a side character. Ends up getting Romeo. Completely steals the entire show. I didn't know he was doing this until he called me up and was like, hey, are you going to be in town this weekend? It's like, actually, yeah, we're going to be back in town. Well, I'm going to be doing a play. I'm like, okay, I know you auditioned, because my brother and I don't communicate very well. It's like, I didn't know you auditioned. Yeah, so if you wanna show up, you can. I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll come watch you. I did not know, and I got the little pamphlet thing when I showed up. It said Romeo and Juliet. I'm like, oh, Shakespeare, okay. So I have to get into that mindset when I'm going to watch Shakespeare. I'm like, okay, it'll be Shakespeare. And we sit down, didn't even look at what role it was, didn't even bother to ask him. I'm like, oh, he'll be in the play, I'll notice him, and whatnot. And I sit down, and they do the opening scene, and Romeo comes out, and he's being all, like, moody and stuff. And if you know my brother's very, like, he's a business major. Like, he's very, kind of how he is. I knew he was very into art and stuff. But, like, the guy comes out, and he's all, like, moody, and he's just like, because if you've seen Romeo and Juliet or know Romeo and Juliet, Romeo's kind of a pansy guy, just to be honest. Like, just how he is. He's all, like, swooning over girls. And he comes out, and I'm like, dang, this kid's good. And I, like, open the brochure, and I'm, like, pulling my phone out to, like, look at it. I'm like, totally didn't even see him, because they did something to his hair to make it look more floofy and stuff. And they, like, he had, of course, the stage makeup on, and, of course, he's in, like, the big whatever era.
Shakespeare stuff.
Yeah. Speaking in Shakespeare. I can't even recognize his voice. And I'm like, that's, like, whoa. Like, and it's just one of those things that I could have been jealous, like, because I did drama in high school. And I couldn't land. I landed one role, and it was a side character, and I was so proud of myself. And the importance of being earnest. I was Mr. Grimsby. And, that's not even a character in the main importance of being earnest. It's in, like, the extended cut, if you will. So I landed a side character in an extended cut. But I got on stage, and I could have been super jealous of him. But I was so happy for him. I was like, that's my brother. And it seems like a minor thing, but when we get into, we start practicing that growth mindset, we start to celebrate victories of others. Rather than being jealous, we start to celebrate them. And I'm not tooting my own horn in that, because there are many other areas that I still have a fixed mindset in, that I'm still trying to work on.
Perfect. What?
Right, but that's it, and that you hear it in my own words right now. As you work on it, you're thinking about, like, I'm still working on me. I'm letting God and the Holy Spirit change who I am to be better. So a growth mindset is thinking, at first it's going to be hard. I'm going to accept that, but I will improve. You have to believe that in yourself. There has to be a solution. You don't give up whenever you run into some challenge. I can find the way. I will take responsibility for. Oh, that's another thing too with growth mindset. Those of you who've been in the business world and have been, not just anyone in the business world, but anyone who's in a job where you work with other people, how many of you get really ticked off whenever you try to confront someone about something they've done and they just, like, completely dismiss responsibility on everybody else and they don't take responsibility for their own mistakes? Yeah, frustrating, right?
Don't work with her anymore.
So the thing is, we need somebody who's in that growth mindset will acknowledge and take responsibility for their own mistakes, their own errors, and say, hey, I messed up. I am going to fix it, though. And you might feel ashamed, you might feel embarrassed and stuff at the moment, but you understand it's an opportunity to grow. And so I have some verses here that are kind of related to pulling that Bible now into this concept of growth mindset. And these are all verses on growth. I'm not going to lie.
Before you do, can I share?
Oh, yeah, please, sorry. Pause
So-
for things.
One of the things that makes this growth and fixed mindset thing so interesting is that it's in course of research and stuff. It's fairly new.
Right.
When I went to college in the late '80s, early '90s, it was believed that your brain stopped developing and started losing at about 12. You were done at 12.
Yep. It was like.
Yeah, and it was all down here from, I mean, you
Yep.
just, if you missed any growth or development or emotional maturity or anything like that by the age of 12, it put a ton of pressure on parents. You got till they're 12. And then if you haven't got them where they need to be, you've lost all your chances. And then in the 90s there was a ton of breakthroughs in brain development research. And that information is just really, in the last 10 years or so, has really come into light. And so a lot of this growth mindset versus fixed mindset goes against anything that the older adult version, it's completely new information to us.
Even in the last 5 years, because when I first started out in communication major, they're like, yeah, you can train yourself to do this and that, but you have a set of, core ways that you communicate, interact, that you're going to have to adapt to, your environment. Like, that's unchanged. There's, that's stagnant or whatever.
And that's what I think, what I try to teach my kids at school on that note is like, there are limitations. There are things you're better at than others, but that's part of acknowledging. Like, I'm really strong in these areas and I'm really weak in these areas. And have you guys seen, this is the example I use with the kids. Have you seen Zootopia?
Yeah.
Some of you have. For those of you who have not seen the movie Zootopia, I do
It's a
encourage
really good
it's a Pixar, is it not Pixar, it's DreamWorks, I think. Anyway, it's an animated movie. The whole point of it is there's this little bitty bunny who's from this literal, like, rural town and it's all like the animal humor. It's all like, the population is growing, their sign like grows every second as the rabbits are all, anyway. So like, she's from this small town and she goes into a big city because she's gonna become a cop. And it's all about like, bunnies don't become cops. Like, you're a bunny. Like, you see next to all these other ones, you have like rhinoceroses and gorillas and like all of these other big tigers, lions, like all of these big animals are the cops, and you have this little bunny. And she's like, I'm gonna be a cop. And it kind of takes you through the hardships of her learning to be a cop. And spoiler alert, she becomes a cop and she does pretty well. But it's that concept of the growth mindset I teach the kids that. It's like, yeah, her set of skills and limitations, she has a lot going against her if she wants to do this. If you want this job, if you want to go in this direction, you're going to have to work really, 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 really hard because you have a lower skill set in this area. But you can do it. You just understand that it's going to be a little more challenging for you. But you have to accept that and when you get frustrated, take a breath and move forward and keep going, if that's what you want. And so part of that, like what you were saying, Lindsay, is with that communication, like in communication we're talking about, it's okay to acknowledge our strengths and weaknesses, and it's okay to go with our strengths and not worry about our weaknesses, but we don't ever want to just say, I can't do it. You know what I mean? Like,
It was also some of the theory too was, you are the person you are, and you can only change 10% of that. Like, that's the only part that like you can grow from.
Right.
And I was like, so you're telling me 90% of me is already like stuck in this? I did not like that theory.
think about the implications of that mindset now when it comes to people's salvations. I mean, we run into this if you've been in Christianity for a while, there's a lot of people out there who have this mindset of, well, God would never accept me. I've done too much. You can't understand the stuff that I've done. And that's another part of the fixed mindset is like, you can't understand my situation. There's no way you can understand me because it's all, again, fixed. You're this way, I'm this way, that's how it is. And we run into those people all the time. Well, I was going to do this later, but let's do it now. How do we talk to those people now? I know for a fact that because I've had this conversation with Jeff and Jill before, we've run into those kind of people. How do we engage with them?
Like in a spiritual way, or just in life?
Or just in life in general, you know what I mean? Because sometimes they may not be ready to hear the message yet.
Doesn't it really depend, well, at least with me, if they're coming off as, or negative, I'm like, I'm not dealing with that. I don't need that negativity or that whatever on mine.
Right.
But if they're willing to sit and talk and have conversations, have at it.
So I think a big part of that is the timing. I think that's what you're getting at there, right? It's that the concept of they're not ready at this point. I'm not going to put a bunch of effort into it if I'm just literally going to be hitting the wall.
Well, I think we have to remember that we have to go to God in prayer first and let the Spirit do His work. Sometimes we just have to get out of the way.
Yeah.
I mean, and just kind of respond to what the Spirit is telling us to do and let the Spirit do the work with them, and then trust that He'll let us, nudge us to speak up or guide us along the way with them.
I like to think, I'm really big into spiritual warfare, like battlefields. So, analogies, this might be a very bad example, but I like to think of prayer as like calling in the reinforcements and then like carpet bombing the area, pepper the field before you go in. That's what I like to think of prayer as. That's probably not a very good analogy to think that God's bombing people. But I mean, He does weaken their barriers if we let God do the work first.
I tend to use examples from the Bible, from the New Testament, of the people that Jesus targeted. Jesus targeted the woman at the well, targeted Zacchaeus, targeted people who would cause uproar, who were the worst of the worst, whatever.
People who you don't want to have lunch with.
Yeah, and if those people became part of Jesus' inner circle, they're really, you can't tell me that you've got something that's worse than that,
Right.
There's, yeah, that's just kind of that's the angle I take.
Right. Right. And some people don't even realize it. Sometimes all it takes is just a little changing the way they think before they're like, oh.
Yeah, I always say, even if you're not willing to talk to God, He knows your sins. If you're not willing to bring that up with you, He's still there waiting for you to get to that point. Even if you think you're unsavable, like He is literally still there. So if He doesn't think, if He agrees with you, why would He be in your, life still, etc. I say it more eloquently in a moment.
It's almost like the Holy Spirit speaks through you in the moment.
Sometimes.
Well, sometimes the only thing we can do is just love them until they're ready for that conversation. Let them know you're available.
Right. And I know from my experience, sometimes it's a matter of me having to understand where they're coming from. I have to listen first before I can understand where they are. Some people have had a very different upbringing, very different lifestyle than I have. Very different. In fact, some friends of mine and I were talking just the other day how just our family dynamics growing up and our expectations. I had some friends come from out of town and they stayed in my house and they were telling me that I was being too host-like. I was cooking meals for them and I was like preparing sleeping arrangements and whatnot, and they were just like, we just wanted to come and hang out. And I was like, but so we started talking about it a little bit more and found out just through that conversation that their way of inviting people over to their house was very similar to how I feel coming over here. Hey, fridge is over there, top cabinet on the right's drinks. We don't have much right now because we haven't gone shopping yet, but help yourself to whatever. Water's in the faucet over there. They're like, don't even get up from the chair. They're like, yeah, bathroom's back there. And they go back to like watching their TV. It was kind of how it was. And I'm like, I grew up with my house, like you greeted them at the door, you welcomed them in, you took their coats, you went and hung the coats up, you had like dinner ready. Yeah, that's just how we did it. So anyway, like sometimes it just takes a matter of sitting down and listening to the person. And like Jeff was saying, you just gotta love them. You gotta keep listening. You gotta put up with a lot of mess sometimes before they're at the point where they're ready to hear it.
I love the little tagline that's, they don't see, people need to know that you care before they care what you know.
Yes. Very powerful. So yeah, any other thoughts on that?
Kind of let them talk. I think sometimes it's easy to be like, oh yeah, I totally know how you feel. Let me, tell you what I went through in relation. Like, this is personally something that's hard for me. Is like sometimes just sitting there and letting them say everything, and me just, showing signs that I'm listening, but I'm not putting any input. Is more powerful than trying to relate my situation and try to tell them empty words of how they should feel better and stuff like that.
Right. Or even sometimes the concept of people expect us, if we're church people, as a pastor or whatever, and they're waiting for that moment for us to jump in there with a Bible verse or a jab or whatever, and then we'll just go, that sucks. And then they're waiting for it, like, aren't you gonna tell me I'm horrible because they're sitting there cursing at someone in front of you or whatever. I've had kids do that to me. They're just purposely will curse in front of me to see how I will react. It's like amazing. So, and that in and itself is powerful. They're waiting for the reaction. They're waiting for us to grimace or face or whatever. But part of that, again, that growth mindset is listening and understanding and realizing they're different and not presented as standoffish, but as and not necessarily welcoming. You're not necessarily welcoming their lifestyle or whatever, their background into your life. You're just listening, understanding, so then that way you can reflect back to them what they need. So, looking at some verses now, we've got it's going to be a whole hodgepodge of verses. Rapid fire, anyone who wants one. Okay. 1 Peter 2, 1-3. 1 Peter 2, 1-3. Who's got it? 1 Peter 2, 1-3.
How fast do you want it now?
Now we'll just go one at a time.
Okay.
1 Peter, so that way people who are writing notes aren't going to be like, wait. 1 Peter 2, 1-3.
Therefore, rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind. Like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation, now that you have tasted the Lord is good.
Yes, so the concept is, I would recommend, again, reading all of these verses, please, in context. I'm literally just screenshotting a lot of the stuff that's going on here. But Peter's basically saying, get rid of these bad things in your life, and then crave after the things of Christ. We can grow in our faith. We're not stuck in this concept of, here are the things we were before. Let's get rid of all of that stuff. Let's change and become these new beings. Colossians 2:7. Who's got that? Colossians 2:7.
That'll make us find all the little books, don't you?
Yeah? Oh, yeah. Well, I've got a big book coming up
I
next.
got so lost there for a second, I continued reading.
Isn't it so good?
I'm so sorry, what'd you say? It was the next
Colossians 2:7.
Rooted and built up in him, strengthened in the faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness.
Yes. So this passage again is part of a larger one. Let's give you the screenshot right here. But it's talking about your faith. He's like, basically let your roots kind of grow down in it, and let your lives be then built upon from those roots, the things that you were taught. Then your faith is going to grow up in the truth that you were taught. And then I think it ends with overflowing with thankfulness. Could you read that again? Is that correct? Can you read it again?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Rooted and it went away. Come back.
We're gonna wait for more.
I'm sorry. I put him on the spot.
There we go. Rooted and built up in him, strengthened in the faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness.
Right. So once you are rooted like that, then you'll start overflowing the more that you allow this to change. Okay, here's a big book. Isaiah 54. Isaiah 54, 2 and 3. Isaiah 54, 2 and 3.
Enlarge the place of your tent, stretch your tent curtains wide, and do not hold back. Lengthen your cords, strengthen your stakes, for you will spread out to the right and to the left. Your descendants will dispose nations and settle in a desolate city.
So, yes, that seems
Okay.
weird to say.
But
Just like,
if you read the
sure?
whole thing in context, it's talking about God's letter to Jerusalem. It's like God's message to him saying that, hey, you will rebuild, you will regrow. You're going to stretch, the reason I like this one is because I go to tent camping. So, stretch your tents wide, and, don't hold back. lengthen your cords, strengthen your stakes, basically brace yourself down for what's going to happen, and then you will spread out. You go to the left, you go to the right, your descendants will then settle in the nations. So like, the idea is here, we're not stuck in where we are. And this is a letter to Jerusalem. Again, I'm not trying to take this out of context, read the whole chapter, but it's God's letter to Jerusalem, talking about how Jerusalem will be rebuilt and will continue to grow again and will bounce back. And I don't know, I like the imagery of the tent stakes and stuff, and I found it, so I was like, I'm just gonna keep that in there anyway.
Well, I know that I didn't realize they're talking about lengthening your cords.
Yeah.
When you,
Yeah.
when I'm setting up my hammock, if I use a long cord and go far out, my tarp is wider than if I set it close to, so if it's shorter, then it's gonna be more closed in, and so it's, yeah.
So literally, that's why, again, I like that
Yeah.
analogy, because I was like, I know exactly what he's talking about here. Like, you stretch out the tents, and then that way you have even more secure foundations as well, because you can stretch that out even more. So,
I just like the fact that the tents is the appropriate way to camp.
right.
Because it's biblical.
Oh, yeah?
all you hammock campers.
Not a lot of trees in the desert.
Is that what you're not supposed to get from that? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, right. That was in the right context, right? Therefore, you should only tent. Next one is 1 Timothy 4:15. 1 Timothy 4:15. This is, so a little background while whoever's getting there is going to take it. 1 Timothy 4:15. This is a letter from Paul to Timothy. Timothy was kind of like Paul's mentee, if you will. He was the person that he kind of poured into. Timothy was young. We don't know how young he was exactly, but he was young enough that Paul had to make reference to the fact, in just a few verses before this actually, that he said, don't look anyone look down on you because you're young. So he was young enough that older people in the church were looking down on him. So this is Paul's letter to Timothy. Again, I would read most of chapter 4 in context to kind of get it, but he kind of sums up with this in 4:15.
Be diligent in these matters. Give yourself wholly to them, so that everyone may see your progress.
Again, so these matters are the things that he discusses above. But he says, give yourself wholly to them so that everyone then may see your progress. So this is talking about how once we start rooting ourselves in this mindset, we start building upon these things, and we dedicate ourselves to growing them, everyone will then start to see the change. And we can start really impacting the world the way that God intended. 1 Corinthians, 2 more. 1 Corinthians 13:11.
What was it again, Sam?
1 Corinthians 13:11.
When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put childish ways behind me.
This is in a bigger context of love.
I might have been quoted this a few times when I was growing up.
Right? So
But I'm only
you had that one
6.
memorized?
Yeah.
Say, maybe you have that memorized. He's actually talking this in the context of love and faith and whatnot, if you look at it in context. But in the context of love, we used to think these ways as a child. If you guys have tried to logically reason with a child, it doesn't work. Children are very fixed mindsets just in general because their brains haven't developed yet. They have a very concrete way of thinking. Now that we're adults, we need to put away those things and start thinking more globally, thinking more of the concepts of growth as opposed to that fixed concrete mindset. And the last one, Philippians 1:6. So again, this is Philippians, this is part of your essay. Read all of Philippians. But this is Paul immediately talking about the church in Philippi. And Philippians 1:6. And how he's kind of admonishing, no, complimenting, praising. Is it an admonishment? Is that the right?
No, admonishing is.
Yeah, okay. Not that. The opposite of admonishment. I try to use big words and I use them wrong. Philippians 1:6. Someone take that.
Being confident in this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus.
Okay, does anyone know when Christ is returning?
Nope.
Okay, so that means we need to keep growing until he gets here, okay? There's never a point where we should ever stop. He's saying to this church, he began a good work in you, let it continue till Christ returns. So, never stop, never give up, never surrender. Galaxy Quest. Anyway, so the points that we've got here, 3 action steps, if you will. Watch your words and thoughts. So that's the first one. Watch your words and thoughts. Change your I can't to I can't yet. So that can just change your mindset right there, just adding yet to it. Even if you just, in your mind's palace, if you will, your own thoughts, just say, I can't do that yet. Don't ever defeat yourself. Or I don't understand. I don't understand yet. Going to continue to grow. That's point 1. Watch your words and thoughts. Change your can'ts to can't yet. Second one. This is grammatically incorrect, but I'm going to read it this way. Get you some God words.
We love it.
I don't know what I was thinking, but anyway, get you some God words.
I was thinking that you were preaching to pre-culture.
I guess, yeah. Get you some God words. All right. What I mean by that, find scripture that is life-changing to you, memorize it, and memorize it. So that way, whenever you need it, the Holy Spirit can bring it right to your recollection. Because I'm telling you, that is powerful. The Word of God is powerful and effective. It will change your life. So memorize those verses, let them become life mantras, and get you some God words. So
God,
Be a
Jesus, Holy
teacher.
Spirit.
Even if you don't have the numbers and the chapter verse,
Right.
just the words are, because memorization is hard, but if you can just remember some parts of words.
Be still.
I have a hard time with memorization, really.
Right.
Like, I won't say I can't, but it's difficult for me.
Right.
And so, but just having pieces where I can say, I know it's in there, there's a phrase, here it is, couldn't tell you where it is, but I know it.
Well, we know it's, oh yeah, same for me. I think I've learned, I think the John 3:16 is in like the New King International Living Translation. I think is my, like, John 3:16, so the idea's there.
Right. Get the concept.
So, but yeah, read it. Read your scriptures, memorize it. If you don't have a memorization plan, then write it on the bathroom mirror. I have a dry erase marker. I used to write on the bathroom mirror. And then whatever it might be, have a sticky note. Put it in your car. Put it in your rear view mirror of your car when you get in the car. Well, not so much blocking vision, but just so you can see it. So, put something where you read the verse every day until it sinks in your brain. We all can have the ability to memorize, like you said. Some of us it takes longer than others because I guarantee there are songs you know every word by heart. So you can memorize. And the last one, keep on keeping on. Don't ever, ever, ever give up. Never let that defeatist mindset get to you. Continue to press on. The more that we have God's word in our heart, the more we let Him change us, steps get a little bit easier. Doesn't mean we're not going to run into something, because we're going to run into something new that I'm like, I didn't know I struggled with that. Now I know. I thought I had forgiveness figured out until I ran into some difficulties in my life, and I was like, haha, I know nothing of forgiveness. I feel like I know a little bit more now, but I'm still getting there. So, I mean, that's the 3 things. Watch your words and thoughts. Can't becomes can't yet. Get you some God words. I'm going to leave it like that. Get you some God words. And keep on keeping on. Okay, those are our action steps for this week. And read Philippians. That's good. Thoughts, comments, questions?
I feel like you've made this sermon for me this week. I won't lie.
Yes, it actually is said. It says at the top here in like full bold letters. Stare at Lindsay while you do
No, I did this weekend run into a situation. Hopefully she's not watching this. It's awkward, and I'm not going to go too much into it. But it was kind of like me praying, like, how can I help someone? I don't know, and like I was able to say things and stuff like that, but I didn't have the scriptures completely memorized. I just had the concept and what they meant and what they mean to me. And so I'm like, later I got home and I'm like spamming with the Bible verses that I could remember. I'm like, I hope this helps.
I think it's a little harder for some of us older. I'm not saying we're old, but like, I'm old. And I'm the oldest one in the room, I'm pretty sure. Like, my junior high art teacher told me I didn't need to bother to take any more art classes. I went as far as I was gonna go.
Right.
And my music teacher said, please don't take music when you get past this, elementary school.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, but it is,
It
like I
is.
said, it was completely different back then as far as thinking process. And so we do kind of sometimes get a mindset of, I can't do that, so I'll just move on and do something different.
Right, and I think don't want to misunderstand too, because I agree with that, because I'm in the same boat. Just because I can't do something, and I guess the difference is, like, for example, with art, I always go back to art. I'm not good at art, but now I know I could do art if I was interested, but I'm not interested, so I don't want to go back into that. And I think that's the difference in our minds, is like, it's okay to tell us that, like, oh, I'm not very good at whatever.
Well, it's like we grew up very much like the aptitude test for
Yeah.
the military and all that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, here's how your mind works. You need to do this, or this.
Yeah.
And that was just how it really was.
Yeah. Of the whatever 50 or 108 jobs or whatever, number one in mine was forest ranger, and the bottom one was clergy.
I like listening to your stories, Jeff, because you're literally like the one that shows growth mindset.
Poster child.
Like really, like he really is. Like, I just love that.
I think I do art.
You say I can't do that? Okay.
Yeah, let's do
All
it.
right.
Well, and
You know?
we've come,
I know, I love it.
we've come back and forth pendulum-wise. There was a point in time when you were like, oh, you've got weaknesses. You need to spend time in your weaknesses and get them strong so that you can be an overall strong person.
Right.
And then we went to, no, we need to strengthen what you're strong in and
Ignore
kind of ignore the weaknesses
Right.
and find your niche. And we're kind of going back. Somewhere there's a balance.
Right, and that's
Yeah, it's not so much that we don't want to ignore our weaknesses, but at the same time, we don't want to make somebody we don't want to even make ourselves focus on things that we don't enjoy.
Yeah,
Right.
but you also gotta look at, is your weaknesses affecting your life? Is
Right.
it something
That's a
that's
big
one.
affecting your life, making you not do things you should do or do?
Right.
That's weaknesses you work on. I'm not a very good drawer. Is that affecting my life? No.
No.
Yeah.
Right, same thing, right.
I mean,
yeah.
it's just on that, and that's, you can't have the either or. It's how does it affect you?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not good at relating to this kind of person.
Mhm.
Well, if you don't really encounter those kinds of people in your life for some reason, I'll just use hipsters because that's a general term. Like, millennial hipsters or whatever. Well, if you're not around a millennial hipsters, then okay. But as long as it's in your mind that if I run into one, I'm gonna have to learn how to do this. But it's like, for example, this new workforce coming up, the jobs, like these kids, some of them because I'm now old. I'm old. I'm now out of the generation of people that are coming up, and so like I'm having to experience what you guys have already experienced with my generation, and the frustrations that my generation. I apologize for.
I've been saying that to my mom a lot. Really, I won't lie.
I apologize, but that's what we have to be ready for. Say something.
Well, I just think that we are, tying it back to identity, it will change the way we are able to be confident in ourselves and confident in Scripture if we're in the growth mindset of I'm not a failure because I have that fixed mindset.
Right.
Because a fixed mindset is more of a failure mindset where everything is I can't move forward because I'm me. But I think really in the end result here is if we can have the growth mindset and be confident in the fact that we're continually moving forward. It may not be at a rate that we're impressed with, but that we're still moving forward is a completely different shift in our personal and spiritual identity. And so I think that's really the crux of the conversation today is really how can we be a confident all around person and spiritual growth person.
Right.
That just
It's Recovery Month. It's Celebrate Recovery Month.
look.
And the T-shirt that I can order from work, and I think I might, is forward is forward no matter how slow.
Get hiking crazy.
It
And if you can't see Jill's shirt, it's really
Right.
cool. It says
Oh.
love out loud.
It does.
I like it.
I
Okay.
it was a fundraiser and I paid way too much money for it, but it just, this is me. Not that loud.
And it should be all of us.
Yeah.
It's funny, just talking about moving slow. The only thing I can remember about that movie is that I watched that Elmer Earth was showing us over a movie, but the DMV was all
Yes.
sloth. All the DMV was sloth.
I bet Sam would enjoy that scene.
Oh yeah. Overall, the movie was kind of I use it as an example for my kids, but that scene,
That was.
I find that on YouTube and I share it with
Look,
people.
it is
Yeah.
sloths in the DMV.
And they enter in during the daytime, and when they're done, they go out, it's night!
Yeah.
Anyway. Any other thoughts, comments?
Also, we need to announce that Facebook and YouTube have both, I believe. This is the third week in a row we've been cut off at 30 minutes.
Okay.
So there is an option that we'll have to, at least on Facebook, where we can stream longer, but our videos will not save. So we're going to lose, unless we look at a different platform, we're going to lose our ability to watch later. So I don't know how we're going to.
Just gotta make our sermons super short.
Yeah.
Part one.
But
You're
we-
just gonna have to start talking faster, guys.
Okay, guys, if you open your Bible,
But yeah, so for those of you who are watching, we're gonna try to figure something out, but I don't know what that will be. But YouTube and Facebook are both shutting us off at 30-ish minutes.
Do we need to have a
Just
meeting
gonna have
to
to start
kinda
going on
discuss
the video
options
game
around
streaming
that?
site.
Because
You don't know what the
that
options
was
are
like,
yet.
I don't even know where to
For a whole
start.
24 hours.
Right.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.